Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Alvin from Dr. Wealth. Today I'm going to share with you a very familiar company called Airbnb. At the time of recording, this company is going for IPO, but probably by the time you watch this video, the shares have already started trading. But I guess it's not too late, because if it's still a compelling long-term investment, it's still early to get in at this point in time. So sit back and enjoy. Let's go. Usual disclaimer, pause and read it if you need to. Okay, so Airbnb is often touted as the biggest hospitality company in the world, right? And this stat was compiled by Scott Galloway, published on his blog, and it shows that Airbnb had 7 million rooms, okay, 7 million rooms as compared to the very major hotel chains that like Marriott, Hilton, Intercontinental, Wyndham, as well as Hyatt. Add up all together, the top 5 of them add up to about just 4.3 million rooms, right? So that makes Airbnb the largest in the world, okay? And it's pretty impressive considering that Airbnb is still considered a young company as compared to Marriott, Hilton. All these have been operating for say 40-50 years at least, right? So technology has really driven the world to a whole new level and able to enable companies to grow at such a fast speed that we have never seen before. And Airbnb used to start off at the lower end of the hospitality accommodation, I would say, right? So in the hotel worlds, you can actually split the levels into 4. Okay, I would say that the lowest level of the economy, right? That's where budget conscious travelers, maybe backpackers, will want to spend as little as possible on accommodation, right? And then they will choose budget hotels or even backpackers inn, for example. And then there's the mid tier, where probably the tour groups, you know, will house their guests, right, the customers at this kind of hotel, where it is still affordable and is of course better than the economy, right? Then there are your upscale, which are like your Hilton, your Marriott, where there are a lot of business travelers. Okay, so there's this kind of reward that keep people in, and they will sell packages to companies, right, to encourage them to use their hotel chains around the world. And finally, we have the most expensive tier, which is the luxury tier, and this would probably be your presidential suite and whatnot, and probably cater to famous people, celebrities, singers, actors, as well as politicians, where security is a lot more important, right, and privacy is a lot more important. So the hotel tiers can be split into these 4 parts, and Airbnb started off from the lower end. And those people who are more budget conscious, they realize that, oh, you see, Airbnb accommodation is not expensive. You can get a better stay for a lower price. So why not? And especially backpackers will make even more sense for them, and because they are after adventures, and Airbnb is about being more assimilated to the foreign environment, right, where the local hosts will allow you to stay in their place, and then you get to really experience the local way of life, right? So Airbnb would appeal to a lot to the budget travelers, as well as some of the mid tiers, right? Mid-tier travelers, it could also be family if not tour group, right? So families where they travel in a bigger group, let's say 4 or 5 people in the family, it's often expensive to book a few rooms just to house the whole family. Whereas Airbnb may provide bigger accommodation, right? Just a whole house by themselves, right? And then they can save a lot more on that side. So Airbnb has been very successful in targeting that kind of customer segment, and over the years they have improved their offering, right, to something like the Airbnb Plus. Okay, this is for those people who want to stay in a more premium kind of experience with better quality of accommodation. So they created this and to target the upscale segment, as well as Airbnb for work. Just now we said that there are a lot of business travelers that will use hotel chains such as Marriott, and now Airbnb wants that pie of their share as well. So they've moved up the chain and created this Airbnb for work to encourage companies to consider, right? And it is possible that they can lower the fees further as well, right? And then they also have this Airbnb luxury tier where owners of villas, of resorts, and whatnot could offer it to people who really want to live the higher end of lifestyle, right? So Airbnb has now catered to all 4 tiers of the hospitality segments. And I would say that, of course, the successes of all these new initiatives, Airbnb Plus, Airbnb for Work, and Airbnb Lux, they are still unproven, okay? But we can see that Airbnb is trying their best to expand in the verticals and not just stay at the economy or the mid-tier levels. So this is where one of the growth areas would come from. And not just expanding vertically, but they are also expanding parallels or in horizontal manner, right? So they have launched these Airbnb experiences, and these are like a very local kind of experience where you can have a very diverse kind of experience that never have done before, right? If you go for any tour group, it's always the tour guide that will bring you around and try to explain to you what the local lifestyle is, etc., right? But when it comes to Airbnb experience, it is different in the sense that they get the locals, right, who have been staying there for decades, to really bring you around and to really share with you what they do in their life or and their trade, right? So you can have like people from a DJ in Cuba, cook in Mexico, or a desert guide, right? And even a therapist in Spain that whisper to the horse, right? So you have this kind of very unique experiences that I guess the tour guide is just unable to do this for the travelers, right? So besides accommodation, they have moved on to the tours, the experience part, right? Not just on the staying, but also on the day-to-day kind of tours that people move around in the cities or even the suburbs, right? So if you add this together, it completes the travel experience a lot more compared to the past, right? If it's just focused on the accommodation. So Airbnb is not just going up the verticals, they are also expanding horizontally. That comes to my point about management execution, right? Because the idea of expansion is always very sexy, the growth is going to come, etc., right? But it all boils down to execution, and it's very important because idea is something that everybody has. Okay, idea is only worth like $1. Execution is like to make that idea into a reality is probably worth 1,000 times. Okay, so management execution was why Airbnb was first funded in the first place. Okay, that goes back to a long time ago, many years ago, about this investor called Paul Graham. Right, this investor is called Paul Graham in this picture over here. So he's a very famous venture capitalist in Silicon Valley who created the Y Combinator, right? And he invested in Airbnb not because of the idea, right? Because he was skeptical of the idea that people would rent a stranger's house and then stay in it, right? So at that point in time, a lot of investors, like even Paul Graham, was very suspicious or not confident of this idea breaking through into the mass market, and he was hesitant. But in the end, right, what actually made him want to fund Airbnb was that the founders were running out of money, right? And they had to sustain Airbnb with their own credit cards and things like this, right? And it wasn't enough. And it was during the election where Obama and John McCain were fighting for the presidency. Right, so they thought of creating this cereal, as you can see on this picture over here, right? So they created this cereal box to sell, and they were selling it like $40. Okay, so that made Paul Graham, right? Just because of this action, Paul Graham decided to fund them. Okay, and he said this: if you can convince people to pay $40 for a $4 box of cereal, you can probably convince people to sleep in other people's habits. He said, maybe you can do it, right? So he was actually betting on the team, the founders, instead of the business. So he was still hesitant about the possibility of Airbnb as a business idea taking off, but he saw that fanatic execution by the founders, right, to keep the business alive. They are willing to do all sorts of things, legally, of course, and ethically, to keep their business going. Right. So that was what made him fund Airbnb in the first place. And you can see this execution carry on until today, right? And we all know that COVID-19 was a very big impact to travel industry, and Airbnb was not spared. And just now we talk about the Airbnb experiences, right? So we all know that travel is probably not possible even in the near future, and of course not during the peak of COVID-19. And instead of people traveling to another place to experience the local host activities, what Airbnb did was to pivot online, right? So then they started to allow their hosts to sell online experiences, to teach, and to really share interesting things that probably they have never seen before. All right, so they keep improvising, and this requires execution because as a big platform, a big tech company, to make this quick adjustment is also not easy, right? If your execution level is not detailed and not there enough. And of course, Airbnb had to lay off some of the staff as well, right? In order for them to reduce the burn rate, to reduce the cash outflow for the company. So the Airbnb decided to lay off about 25% of the employees. And the CEO, the founder, Brian Chesky, wrote a public letter, right, to all the employees. And it got a lot of praise on the media. I don't know whether you have seen that, right? Everybody was praising him that, you have a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion, transparent, and also, then it became a management lesson, right? It became a template or a case study for management to learn how to communicate bad news such as a layoff. Okay, so it is also another proof that you see this Brian Chesky was able to even do a PR very properly, right? If you don't believe that he is empathic in that sense, right? But definitely his PR is there, okay? And even right down to this execution of layoffs, okay? He did it well, all right? And let's look at the financial performance. And prior to COVID-19, from 21.7 to 21.8, the revenue grew about 42%. And in 21.8 to 21.9, the revenue grew at 32%. And of course, comparing this year to last year, the revenue dropped about 32%. Okay, that was since at the start of the year, right? So it's 9 months into 2020. Comparing to the same period, the revenue has dropped 32%. So it isn't as bad as it was, because I remember that Brian Chesky was saying that expect a 50% drop in revenue, but they managed to just maintain it at 32%. So it's pretty impressive, right? Given that COVID-19 really halted travel around the world, and they keep improvising and see what they can do, right? And definitely now, there are some bubbles around, especially even in US, people can move around and stay in Airbnb, right? Of course, that is, you are either for or against this. Some people can feel strongly about this because it promotes the spread of COVID-19 to more people, right? But then there can also be a flip side that, there are some people just really wanting to travel, okay? And as long as they take precautions, right, why not? Okay, so it depends on where you stand, right? But these are the results. Okay, it's not as bad as what people think it is, and the losses. Okay, it's still a loss-making company, right? So they lost like 70 million in 21.7, 16 million, sorry, in 21.8, and about 674 million in 21.9. And this year they will lose more money, right? Expected. Okay, so they are about 700 million at this point in time. All right, so it might sound like, oh, that's a lot of money. Okay, so let's look at close kind of a platform that is similar to like Airbnb, where it matches the suppliers and the demand. Right, together is a platform business. So Uber matches riders as well as the passengers, right? Just like Airbnb matches the hosts and the travelers. Okay, so in that sense, if you look at Uber, they had an $8 billion loss in 2019, and their revenue was 14 billion. So they lost more than half of their revenue. Whereas if you look at Airbnb, they never lost half of their revenue, right? Not in any of the last 3 years, or not even in 2020. Okay, they come in under this year, right? So far it's about say less than 30%. Okay, not more than 50% loss from their revenue numbers. So I would say that again, this is a proof of execution, right? So even when it comes to financial numbers, they control the cost a lot more better compared to say Uber. All right. And a lot of people will start to compare. So Airbnb, what is it? Is it a hotel? Is it an online travel agency? Is it a platform where people recommend you where to stay and things like this? So it is hard to put Airbnb into any of these categories because Airbnb is one of its kind. Okay, it's first of its kind, I would say, and then a lot of the younger ones, the smaller companies start to emulate Airbnb. But the bigger companies like Marriott, Booking.com, TripAdvisor, they are not the same as Airbnb, right? So in terms of Marriott, we already established Airbnb is not about hotels. It's about letting people, homeowners, to rent out their houses, rent out their stay, right, for short periods. Okay, they are not owned by hotels chains, they are not managed by hotel. All right, so the hosts themselves are the ones. Okay, it's user generated, if you want to use the term. It is not Airbnb go and manage the place on behalf of the host, right? The hosts manage it themselves, so it's not comparative to Marriott. Okay, and OTA stands for online travel agencies like Booking.com, where you can just go to one site. It's like aggregator of all the hotels. Okay, but Airbnb is not about being an online travel agency, right? It's not helping you discover hotels. Okay, it's helping you discover stay experience or travel experience. All right, again, it's more towards homes, not so much of hotels. It's not a hotel aggregator like Booking.com. Okay, so it's not really an OTA, I would say. And TripAdvisor is probably a bit closer, right? Because you can book like your tour guide, your trip, to handle your trips in that foreign country, and you get some reviews here and there. And experience, this kind of Airbnb experience is just one part of the entire Airbnb business, right? And also that the difference is it's not tour guides, but in fact they are locals, okay, who are able to now host travelers instead of just a small group of professional tour guides, right? So it's not really a TripAdvisor thing. Okay, so you can see Airbnb is kind of different, right? You can't really place them in very clear categories that are existing at this point in time. And that comes to that idea that some of these travel companies is experiencing the Google squeeze. That was a term that was mentioned by Stratechery, a very famous blog that gives a lot of business and tech analysis, right? So how he described this was that a lot of the online travel agency will run ads, and eventually they have to go through Google, because Google is the ultimate aggregator to reach the audience, because all the travelers will just use Google to search for stay, accommodations, for trips, all these kind of things, right? So in order for them, they either do content, right, try to rank well organically, or they can buy ads on Google so that they can be discovered by the audience. Then the thing is that suddenly Google created a hotel module, right? I don't know whether you experienced this. Okay, you try search for any hotels or hotel accommodation on Google search engine, you will see the hotel module today. So that makes Google a lot more powerful, right? Because now they become the OTA, they become an aggregator without the need for an OTA already. So that will force them to pay even more money to appear or to get recommended on this hotel module, right? So it actually just make Google more powerful and stickier, and ad revenue to increase from there, right? So this is what the hotel module look like, right? So you do a search, let's say a hotel in San Francisco, and then you can straight away choose the date and then the people, number of people, and you got a list of recommendation with the pricing, right? And also a map from Google to show you proximity to any facilities that you can access to. All right, so that's like the Google squeeze that Stratechery was talking about, and it became a very big threat to all the online aggregators in the travel space. But I think it is not a concern. It's not so much a big concern for Airbnb, right? So because Airbnb is not not well-known name, okay, because Airbnb has very strong branding, okay, which is different from say your Booking, your Expedia, your Trivago, right? All these are very commoditized because they are similar. They are just competing with each other with very identical products and services, and which we already mentioned, your Airbnb is not an online travel agency, right? It's really selling the experiences, okay? And if you go to Google and search for accommodation, yeah, they are fighting, okay? Your Booking, your Expedia, your Trivago, etc., right, are fighting for the ranking. But if let's say you want to stay in a hosted house by a local, you will not go to booking.com, or you won't really go and search for hotel accommodation on Google, right? That is, you're clear that you're going to hotel. But let's say you want to stay in someone's house, you will go to Airbnb because you remember, right? So Airbnb has a very strong brand recall. And the funny thing is, some people will say, oh yeah, Google is where you will find Airbnb, but people are actually using Google to search for Airbnb to get to Airbnb. So in itself, the search, this is a brand recall, right? This is not a generic search term. And I don't know about you, right? For me, I don't have Booking.com app in my phone. I don't have Expedia app in my phone. I don't have Trivago app in my phone. I have an Airbnb app in my phone, right? So people will just go directly to the platform to make their booking, their search, right, if they want to stay in a more localized kind of experience. Okay, so it is not so impacted by the Google squeeze, if you ask me, because Airbnb has developed own brand name by itself already, right? And let's do some comparative valuation. So the IPO will be priced at about $56 to $60, or a valuation of 42 billion, and that has been raised just before the IPO, right? That means that a lot of investors are very confident that they can command this kind of valuation, right? So it's on a higher end, and I estimated about 3.3 billion revenue in 2020, right? Because the last quarter has not completed yet, what I did was just conveniently deduct that 30% reduction for the full year from 2019 to get an estimated revenue for 2020, right? And based on the valuation divided by the revenue, we'll get a price to sales ratio of about 13 times, okay? Because Airbnb is still making losses, we cannot use metrics like P ratio, right? So price to sales is typically more easier to use metric, right, when it comes to comparing the valuation of all these tech companies, right? So I also have put up the price to sales ratio for the other companies, all right? But just because, as I said, the Airbnb is different. There isn't a really direct kind of a competitor, right? They are not an OTA like Booking.com, Expedia, etc. Okay, but it's good to get some sensing, right? So it is right that Airbnb should trade higher than Booking.com, Expedia, Trivago, etc. because they are more than OTAs, right? That brand name has a premium attached to it. So if Booking is at 10x price to sales and Airbnb is 30x, it sounds fair, right? Expedia is 3x, Trip.com is 7x, 2x for Trivago. Okay, so you can see that Airbnb is consistently more expensive, right? Which is correct. Okay, which should be the way, in my opinion. And TripAdvisor on the experience part, right, because they only serve a very small segment of the whole travel industry, right? So Airbnb having a 13x is also fair. Okay, then I also give you some of the other platforms, right? So Meituan Dianping it will be mostly in China, right? So they are commanding a 13x, but the business is also a little bit different because they had more than travel. They had the food delivery business segment, right? So which is not totally travel, right? I put in the matching platforms like Uber and Upwork, right? Upwork is also another platform that matches people who are looking for work, part-time work, okay, and companies who are looking for people to do their work, right? So it is also a matching platform. So I thought that we can get some of these references as well. So Uber is trading at a price to sales of 7 times, okay, and then your Upwork is about 13 times, right? So all in all, it shows that this 13x price to sales valuation is indeed on the higher end, right? When you look at this group of companies, okay. But that said, I don't think it is excessive, right? I think it is fair, okay, at this 13x, right? Because there are companies that are already trading at this price point, okay. 4 classes of shares will be issued in this exercise. All right, so class A is the one that you will be actually buying if you are buying, okay. So you get 1 vote for every 1 share, and typically tech companies like to have multiple share classes. That's to protect the control of the founders especially. So class B will be held by the insiders as well as the core management, and each share will have 20 votes, right? That should give the founders more voting power, even though they may hold less shares in the company, right? Class C is mentioned, but they are not issuing at the moment. Okay, it has no voting rights. And then class H is for this host endowment fund, right? See, so they also wanted to take care of the host, not just their own employees, their own investors, their own management, right? So they created this host endowment fund. Especially this was due to the experience they had in COVID-19, and they wanted to make sure that if something like this happened again, this fund can help the host tide through the tough periods. Okay, so I think that this is the right thing to do, right? So they also take care of the various stakeholders in the entire ecosystem. So that is a good thing that Airbnb has done, right? So in summary, I would say that Airbnb is a one-of-a-kind travel platform that we have never seen before. All right, so if you really believe that it is so, then this will make one unique investment, and the growth will come from various areas, right? So they are trying to grow vertically, okay, trying to move up the quality of the stay, moving to cater to business traveler, to even like high net worth individuals who wants finer things in life, right? So they're moving out the verticals, and they're also moving horizontal to include Airbnb experiences to sell tours as well, right? Not just accommodation, and also geographic expansion. That is a given. That's a given, right? Because they are about travel. So the more places they serve, the better the platform will be. And I mentioned that price to sales at 13x is on the higher end compared to a lot of other companies, but it is not excessive for this one-of-a-kind unique travel platform that's going for listing. So I think there are 2 ways to play this if you are interested in Airbnb. Okay, of course, views may differ, right? But this is what I think it is. They have proven to have exceptional execution skills. Right, so if you are buying this for long term, you're actually betting on a team that they will be able to execute better than their competitors until they achieve the vision, right? And that would really be becoming the all-in-one travel app that you ever need, right? Whether is it booking of accommodations, travel around with a local host, touring around, enjoying experiences, or even maybe, I don't know, right, to expand to booking your airline tickets and things like this, right? So I do think that it is their fanatical execution, which have proven from the day one until even today, right? Even during the tough times of COVID-19, they have once again proved themselves that they are able to push the company, right, regardless during good times or bad times. And I guess there are also people who want to play this as a short-term trade, right? I think it's also possible, given that the current investment climate, US market has been very crazy. Okay, there seems to be a lot of demand for a lot of these kind of tech stocks, faster growth tech stocks. And I do think that after it go IPO, share price should trade higher, right? I do think that it will trade higher. This is a very well-known name, and there's a lot of hype in tech companies at this point in time. A lot of people want stocks, okay, and they will beat up the price. So I do think that even in the short term, it should do well, right? And if you ask me, of course, the bigger reward would be to bet on the long term, and that they will be able to really establish an all-in-one travel super app. All right, so that's all from me. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you do, please like our video, subscribe to our channel, and also leave your comment in our the boxes below, so that we know, right, what kind of videos would you like to see more, what kind of stocks would you like us to analyze more, and whatever we can improve from here. Right, so thank you for watching, and good luck.